think we all had those movies and shows that scarred us during our childhood. You know what I mean. Those forms of media that left young you sleeping with the lights on and begging your parents to sleep in their bed. The kind of terror that sticks with you for years, but adult you decides to bury it deep in your memories. You know the kind of thing I'm talking about. Something so scary, like heffalumps and woozles from Winnie the Pooh. True fear. Hey, what's going on, guys? It's your BFF Snowy Oreo 663 here, right now. Childhood trauma. Like I mentioned in the opening, we all have the things that scared us during our childhoods. These things may be really dumb now, but ask our younger selves, they'll cower in fear. Nowadays, my horror-loving self doesn't bat an eye at most of these. I say most because, well, I think child me was right about some of the things we'll talk about. I know this topic was really popular on YouTube a few years ago, but hey, better late than never. I'll be sharing the top 10 movies that gave young me a terrible case of sleeping with the lights on, starting from the least traumatizing to the most. Let's go. Number 10. What could be more safe to show your kids than a Disney film? The first Disney film even, starring a beautiful princess. Well, one thing, and her name is Grimhilda, the evil queen. Oh no, not her, she's fine. This one. F that witch. I remember watching this on VHS as a kid, and let me tell you, when Queenie McQueenface made her transformation, my hand was already on the fast forward button. She's menacing as all hell. I think what made her appearance even more frightening for me was the way I saw her on the Snow White Scary Adventures ride at Magic Kingdom. Rewatching this film as an adult, not many of the scenes in the movie hit me with the childhood nostalgia. When I rewatched footage of the now defunct ride, it all came crawling back. My dad was a huge fan of this ride, and I would always be dragged on, kicking and screaming. He eventually stopped taking me on it, and now it's been replaced by a garbage meet and greet. While Grimhilda's appearance scared me mostly in the parks, I can thankfully still visit her on the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train if I feel like scaring the inner child version of myself. Number 9. Before I go into this, I need to mention what didn't scare me as a child. Coraline. Yes, Coraline. I loved that movie as a kid. It did give me some jitters, but they were welcome ones. Other movies that I loved were the Lord of the Rings trilogy and The Dark Crystal. But there was something about Corpse Bride that scared me terribly. I never made it far into the movie as a kid. I tapped out during the Remains of the Day song, which is a freaking banger, by the way, and it's honestly the least scary part of the movie. But it came right after the scariest scene, where Victor accidentally performs a marriage ceremony with a corpse. Emily stalks him in a legitimately frightening scene, one that now fills me with so much glee. I love me some spooky atmosphere. I could have easily finished the movie back then, but I decided to call it quits. I have a very vivid memory of watching this one for the first time. My dad showed it to me, and during the song, he turned to me and asked what I thought of it. I responded with, "I think this is gonna give me nightmares." And it did. Thanks, Dad. Number 8. So, when you're an adult, you kind of have to wait until the kids are asleep before you can watch your movies. But what do you get when the kid is being a little shit and won't stay in her bedroom? Well, you get a kid walking in on a scary scene. This one happened at my grandma's house. I was maybe around 4 years old. I walked into the bedroom to see her watching Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire.
But what scary scene was she watching? Voldemort's return? Mad-Eye Moody melting? The freaky mer people? The Death Eater raid on the Quidditch Cup?
Nope, it was actually this very shot that was burned into my eyes. Ooh, scary. This single scene in the maze made me actually tense up and start to cry. As a matter of fact, I avoided all Harry Potter films like the plague until the Deathly Hallows came out, which I eventually ended up watching. I was just too scared. And need to remind you, this incident happened when the Goblet of Fire had just come out, way back in 2005. Scary shit, man. Thanks, Grandma. Number 7. Well, my dad's given me 2 nightmares, my grandma's given me 1. Now it's time for my grandpa to get a turn. This incident happened when I was in that I'm really cool and grown up now phase at like 11 years old. My grandpa suggested I watch one of his favorite movies, since I believe he figured I was old enough to handle some of the more freaky scenes. What movie was that? Beetlejuice. I remember being slightly freaked out for the duration of the film, but nothing really stuck with me until the end. The scene that scared me to death was the scene where the main characters are literally rotting away while the titular character is trying to marry the teenager. Even nowadays, I can't really handle the appearance of rotting and decaying bodies. I rewatched this movie again about a year ago, and it's honestly a good time. Not an amazing film outside of the practical effects, but still decent. Still kept me up at night though. Thanks, Grandpa. Number 6. Yet another one from my dad. I was a really big Jim Carrey fan growing up, Still am. So whenever he had a new movie out, I was always quick to watch it. So my dad decided to watch the newest movie with me, Jim Carrey's Christmas Carol. Yeah, good choice. That'll work well. I tapped out right after Marley was introduced. Nowadays, the scene is a bit too comical and over the top for me, but back then, yeah, it terrified me. This was actually the first film version of the Christmas Carol I had ever seen, so this was my introduction to Marley. The way he burst into the room with his creepy and off-putting appearance, the absolute terror on Scrooge's face, and while I don't like this at all now, back then, the way his jaw comes off and flops around while he speaks, yeah, that's where I quit. The funny thing is that this isn't even the scariest scene in the film. The scenes with the ghost of Christmas yet to come and the way that the ghost of Christmas present dies is honestly pretty freaky to me now. This movie as a whole is a mixed bag of meh, but the scary scenes are still pretty unsettling. Young me was right on this one. Number 5. So, back to the same scenario as the Harry Potter one, but this time we are at my dad's house. I was maybe about 11 years old when my dad decided to watch a new movie. It was called Plus One. Now, you probably never heard of this movie, and I wouldn't blame you. It's unrated, so it's not available on any streaming services right now. From what I remembered as a kid, this movie revolves around this party where random blackouts cause physical doubles of people to appear, repeating exactly what the people did earlier. With each blackout, the doubles catch up to the real people by about 15 minutes. The scene that I vividly remember is when the people decide to hide out in a pool house as the body doubles get closer. When the time eventually sinks, the people and their doubles just start going ham on each other. One girl's double climbs on top of her and digs her fingernails into her eyes. There's blood and shit. It's bad. This actually freaked me out so bad as a kid that I became super protective of my eyes in every way that I could. I would cover my eyes specifically instead of covering my head if something was falling down on me. I didn't actually know the name of this movie until working on this script. I literally googled movie where time duplicates catch up to people at a party, and then I found the whole movie for free on YouTube. Watching it all these years later, the movie has a good concept, but it's just a sleazy mess. It only gets interesting in the last 30 minutes or so, but the crew is too goddamn horny to focus on the actual plot. As for the part that scared me, they went hard with the gore, but that only lasts about 2 minutes, and I didn't understand the ending at all, but young me was justified in finding that scene scary. Number 4. Now we are on to a movie that still to this day I have never sat down to finish. I was actually introduced to this movie on WatchMojo.com of all places, in a video titled Top 10 Scariest Scenes in Animated Movies or something like that. Because of where I saw it from, I had to be around 14. From the short clip, I was so traumatized that I couldn't get it out of my head. That movie is Watership Down, the G-rated animated film that would make a lot of R-rated movies piss their pants. Watership Down follows a group of rabbits on their quest to find a new home. It wasn't the blood or violence that scared me, it was one particular scene that Watch Mojo used in their clips. The scene where a rabbit details what it was like being buried alive with so many of its kind. This one shot and the actor's line delivery of
"Runs blocked with dead bodies. We couldn't get out."
really got under my skin. I've now seen analyses of this movie out of curiosity, but never the whole thing. I think it will at some point, but to be honest, the film never really piqued my interest. I love horror and I love animation, but in those films, I mostly look for fun. Watership Down doesn't seem like it wants the audience to have fun, but yeah, I think child me had every right to be afraid. Number 3. Picture this. You're watching your 8-year-old granddaughter for the day and you decide to take her to go see a movie. There's a brand new animated movie in theaters, so you buy her tickets and popcorn and the two of you sit down to watch. Then you realize you bought tickets to see 9. Holy fuck, I love this movie as an adult. The dark tone, the constant peril and death, the freakish creature designs, and the brilliant commentary really make this movie an anomaly. Out of everything I talk about on this list, this one is by far my favorite now. But child me took one look at this thing and lost my mind. Yeah, I saw this in the theater thinking it was a fun animated film. I remember my grandma was horrified along with me. I won't talk for long about this movie purely because if you've seen it, you know it would have scared me. And if you haven't seen it, I don't want to spoil anything else. You really should give this one a watch. It's worth it. As for young me, I think she was just a little wuss. If she could handle the other mother, she could clearly handle a human skull snake puppeteering a dead body to capture new people and suck out their souls. Grow up, little Snowy. Number 2. You know how Hollywood loves to take brilliant films from other countries and completely bastardize them in a shitty American remake? Well, meet Dark Water. I watched the original Japanese version a few years ago, and to be honest, it got me really emotional. For a horror film, it was really touching and quite sad. The American version, however, looks like a pile of shit. I've never seen it the whole way through, but child me was completely petrified by this film. And the funny thing is, I never even got that far in the film before quitting. My dad rented this movie from Blockbuster and I sat down to watch it with him. I quit watching it in fear about 20 minutes in, before anything supernatural even started. What filled me with so much fear? Well, seeing the water in the sink come out blackish brown! Yes, I'm serious. That alone filled me with so much fear that I couldn't continue. I was terrified to turn on the faucet for weeks. A few months later, I told my dad that I wanted to conquer my fear and to rent the movie again. I didn't make it more than an extra 5 minutes in. While adult me enjoyed the Japanese original, I think I'll let young me win on the American version. I'm just not going to give it the time of day. Before I get to my number 1 pick, I have a few quick honorable mentions. Firstly, the Heffalumps and Woozle scene from Winnie the Pooh that I mentioned in the opening. While I was honestly fascinated by pink elephants on parade from Dumbo, something about the Heffalumps and Woozles scared me as a little toddler. Nowadays, I can say that scene is my favorite part of the movie. Next is the opening scene from this really bad movie called Q. I think my dad was flipping through some channels looking for something to watch when he came across this death scene. I can't show it on YouTube, but basically this guy Alderson wakes up in the sci-fi chamber and crawls into another room. Then he gets sliced into a dozen cube-sized pieces by this weird contraption. Now, as an adult, that was the best scene in the movie because it didn't involve math. And if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. The last honorable mention is actually from a video game, which is why I didn't make the list. I'm a pretty big fan of Five Nights at Freddy's. It's what got me into the YouTube scene. While I have played and completed a lot of the games, the one I never made it past night 1 on was Five Nights at Freddy's 4. The reason for this involves the mechanism of having to listen carefully for the sound to know what to do. The act of listening followed by an extremely loud jump scare was enough to scare me to never play it again after a single attempt. Even as an adult, I can barely bring myself to watch anyone else's playthrough without having someone put the jump scare times in the comments. The reason I'm like this, by the way, is because I have a major sound sensitivity. Any very quiet moment where I'm actively trying to listen followed by an extremely loud noise can cause me to completely shut down. And with all this, what animatronic got me on my first run?
Okay, so the first night is never usually that bad in any of the games, so I'll play through.
Nightmare Chica. I swear, I felt as though she was walking around my house at night. I saw her in my nightmares. Despite her design not being the scariest of all the characters, she was the one who terrified me the most. Hey, also, this was recorded long after I finished the script, but I've completed night 1, and the only reason I did it was because I actually turned my sound off, and all I did was just go to the door and then flash the light, and then go to the other door and flash the light. And if you actually do that repeatedly on night 1, you never have to shut the door because the characters just go back in the hallway. But I'm not going to do night 2 because that involves Foxy, and I don't feel like it. So I've completed night 1, but I'm never going to do it again. Thank you, bye. Well, with the honorable mentions out of the way, it's time for the main event. The film that scared me so much I was stricken with the exact same nightmares every time after watching. The movie that made me tremble in such fear. Number 1. Yeah, not crazy impressive. For those who don't know this movie, it's a parody of monster films. The were-rabbit is nothing but a vegetarian, but because of a vegetable growing competition coming up, he is treated the same as if he were a werewolf eating actual people. And spoiler alert, in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, the main character, the lovable doofus that is Wallace, is the were-rabbit. As a child, even though I watched it all the way to the end multiple times, I would be riddled with the exact same nightmares every time I watched it. The first night after watching the movie, I would be at my aunt's house when a giant man-eating rabbit would tear the roof off the house and try to eat me, to which I would wake up. The second night, I'd be at my dad's house in the garage, making some sort of base. I would open the garage door to let a friend inside, only to get found by the rabbit again, to which it would repeat the ending of my first dream. This same 2-night dream saga happened at least 5 times, since I still enjoyed watching the film. One oddity was around when I started middle school. I had a dream where the rabbit broke into my school and knocked out half the students. I avoided the movie after that, fearful that the dreams would evolve even more. As an adult, this movie is a riot. It's brilliant, funny, and extremely well animated. It's definitely a pretty chill film to vibe with, but it will forever remain as the film that gave me the most childhood trauma. Thanks so much for watching my video. Make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a fun comment. I'll try to respond to as many as I can. With all that said and done, I'll see you guys next time, and remember, protect your vegetables. See ya!